Welcome everybody to today's webinar. You are on the VISTA Supervisor training webinar for the 2019-20 program year. My name is Debbie Wise. I work for NeighborWorks America. I serve as the project director for the NeighborWorks VISTA project. And with us today on the webinar is Charlotte Wiltsey. She is our VISTA leader, our current VISTA leader. And then joining us to deliver the presentation is Stacy Steed with the Corporation for National and Community Service. Stacy is a program officer with the Ohio State Office and is going to be walking us through the slides today. I would like to share with everybody that we are recording the webinar, and we will be sharing the recording and the PowerPoint slides later this week. Please feel free to ask questions on the online group chat feature, and we will be monitoring that during the presentation. And then Stacy will pause along the way to see if you have any questions after she finishes a section. If you are more comfortable unmuting your phone line and asking a question that way, please go ahead and do that. In the meantime, we do have all the lines muted to reduce background noise. So with that, I am going to go ahead and turn things over to Stacy so we can get started.
All right, thanks so much, Debbie. As Debbie said, today we'll be discussing the AmeriCorps VISTA Supervisor Training for NeighborWorks subsites. Our agenda today is going to be around introductions and VISTA 101, project management, VISTA member training, member management, rules and regulations, and then special initiatives. The goals of our presentation will be to understand the VISTA program and the roles of all the key stakeholders, to learn strategies for successful member management, and then also very importantly, knowing where to find all this information and how to access the resources. So we'll start with a long, lengthy overview of AmeriCorps VISTA. Many of you know VISTA was created as a result of the War on Poverty by President Lyndon Johnson in the late 60s. And throughout the time, the mission has really remained the same. It's been about eliminating and alleviating poverty. So in all of our VISTA programs, projects, you'll notice the same key factors. We're building capacity and we're creating sustainable structures for communities across the nation. We have a list of key stakeholders here for VISTA, and VISTA, if you're not familiar, stands for Volunteers in Service to America. I'll go through each of these, and it might seem a little redundant, but I'll touch base on them one more time before we move through. But we have the Inspector General, you'll see there to the side. What the Inspector General does is they provide oversight to ensure that there's no waste, fraud, or abuse that's happening within the Corporation for National and Community Service. We had the pleasure of having the Inspector General representative at the VISTA sponsor convening recently, and she did a great job at articulating what that office does and some of the key pieces to ensure that compliance is consistently happening with the VISTA program. We also have VISTA headquarters. So when you think about the VISTA headquarters, you're probably thinking the deputy director, the director, and other various departments that help with things like budget, policy, guidance, marketing. We have a training unit, and it's very much like what you might imagine. That unit is helping develop curriculum and things like the VMOs to ensure that VISTA members are set up for success. We have the VISTA Member Support Unit, and we call that the VMSU. So this is an administrative unit. It's much like what you might think of an HR department. They're helping with things like paperwork and activating members into service. They help resolve all of the issues that might happen with your member starting as a candidate to being placed as a member. So if there's any travel, anything with their paperwork, the VMSU helps guide and ensures that all of those pieces are taken care of. In the middle is the state office. So like Debbie said, I'm a representative from the Ohio State Office. And what we do is we offer support, training, and technical assistance to VISTA projects throughout the state, and we have the pleasure of also having NeighborWorks as a program in our state as well. The VISTA sponsor here is obviously NeighborWorks. NeighborWorks is the legal entity and responsible for all of the happenings with your AmeriCorps VISTA program. We have the VISTA sub-site supervisors, which is all of you. You have the opportunity to have the day-to-day interactions with all of your VISTA members. And then the stars of the show are obviously our VISTA members that make the commitment to take on these VISTA assignments for 1 year. So when we think about the VISTA member, you might obviously assume that your member is going to be communicating with you on a day-to-day basis, but they'll also most likely have communication with the VISTA leader. So for you all, that's Charlotte, and the project director, Debbie. The VISTA member can have contact with the state office if it's necessary. And we'll discuss this more, but it's important to recognize that the VISTA member is not an employee of your agency. They're subject to your agency's policies and procedures, but there are places where VISTA supersedes. The VISTA leader is an individual who has served at least 1 year, full year, in AmeriCorps, VISTA, or Peace Corps. They often serve as a bit of a liaison between the sponsoring agency, NeighborWorks, and your organization. They do regular check-ins with the member, and sometimes they might even be checking in with you as well. They help to troubleshoot problems with members. We often hear that the VISTA leader is a mighty resource in VISTA projects because they sometimes get the inside scoop from members about what's really happening, whether that's with the social inner workings at your agency, or maybe it's directly with their assignment. The VISTA leader oftentimes has the foresight to really understand what's happening and maybe alleviate problems a little bit faster than they might happen in a standard project without a VISTA leader. So they're a fantastic resource. Many of our VISTA leaders also are often seen as a mentor to the members on the project, seeing as they've had 1 full year of service in the past as well. So the sub-site supervisor, I'm sure you're all well aware that you have the on-site daily operations. You make the day-to-day contact with the members. We'll talk about this more, but one of your key responsibilities is tracking the members' time and attendance, ensuring that the member is really serving those full-time hours for the 1 year. We often hear that our site supervisors are great mentors and coaches for members. Many of our members are looking for careers very similar to the ones that you're having the opportunity to fulfill right now. They admire that work and really respect and value the time that they have with their supervisors. Your project director, Debbie Wise, we're so lucky to have her here. And I know she's not physically in Ohio, but we're so happy that she's part of our portfolio. Debbie has direct contact with the CNCS state office. The state director in our office is the person that manages this project, so she's generally in direct contact with Debbie. Debbie has the opportunity to oversee all of the VISTA operations for the project. She reports to CNCS with any accomplishments that are happening through your VISTA members. She helps manage the members and the sub-sites. She verifies all the members' time and attendance, and she is the guru of all of the communications with the rules and the regulations of AmeriCorps VISTA. Next is our project sponsor. So again, this is NeighborWorks America. This is the legal entity that's responsible for the grant, ensuring that all of the terms and conditions are happening so that we can be in compliance. We already shortly touched base on this, but I'll go back and remind you that the VMSU stands for the VISTA Member Support Unit. It's part of the VISTA headquarters, and they do a wide range of administrative support for VISTA members, for alumni, and also here with our state offices. They help support things like the applications, enrollment forms, training events, keeping members active in service when they're formally leaving service. They're helping with forms, service, travel. Again, anything HR related that you would think of at that capacity, the VMSU generally has their hands in. So you'll also see on this next page, emergency travel, in-service trainings, terminations. There's, again, a wide range of reasons that the VMSU exists and really helps keep the VISTA members going throughout their service. If there's any issues, especially at the start of service or the close of service, that's generally when the VMSU has the most contact with the VISTA member. You'll see down at the bottom, and these slides will be obviously available to you as well, the phone number for the VMSU and also the email so that you could be in direct contact, or the member could be as well. So as mentioned earlier, we have the Inspector General. They're an independent unit of CNCS. And really, if there were any complaints or any audits that revealed anything suspicious, then the Inspector General will create an investigation to ensure that there's no waste, fraud, or abuse happening within the Corporation for National and Community Service. VISTA headquarters. We've already talked about the VMSU. They activate members, they manage members, they keep the official files. The training unit, we've alluded to the fact that they do just that. They help create the training schedule, they facilitate the trainings, they help facilitate the travel for trainings. And then our VISTA leadership, they help with the policies, the guidance, the rules and regulations. They help craft the annual budget, and they make directives around programming, impact, and also with marketing and recruitment. Coming back to our state office, so again, we have Tina Dunphy, our Ohio State Director. She's fantastic. She's been serving in some capacity with national service for over 20 years. So she's a wealth of information, and we just are so fortunate to have her leading national service here in Ohio. My colleague Jen Irwin is a state program officer. She is a VISTA alumni. She's been serving with the Corporation for National and Community Service for over 10 years. Tanya Peterson, she's actually working on a data assignment right now, but we don't want to lose her, so we still are referencing her as a state program officer. She served a year with AmeriCorps State National. She was also in Peace Corps. She's been with the Corporation for National and Community Service for over 5 years. And again, she's such an asset to our team here in Ohio. And my name is Stacy Steen. I served as an AmeriCorps VISTA as well for 2 terms, and I've been here in Ohio as a program officer for a little over 18 months, and it's such a pleasure to be with such a great team here in Ohio. Not only are they great, but we just have a wonderful array of VISTA projects and programs, NeighborWorks included, that we're all fortunate to have the opportunity to work together. So a little bit about what we do. So our role is really to get out into communities and figure out what the needs are, reach out and assist, and help develop and design VISTA projects that are going to have an impact on the community needs and also create some sustainability. Once those projects are developed and awarded, we ensure that we provide technical assistance to all of our grantees so that we can ensure that we've got successful projects. Once we get that going, obviously we have some of the day-to-day work that you all have just recently completed, like VISTA service opportunities, VADs. Right now we're completing placements for VISTA members, and all of the pieces that happen from the start of service to the end of service, our office is responsible for seeing those pieces through. Another thing that we're responsible for right now is monitoring programs for compliance. You may be aware that there are some changes that are happening within the Corporation for National and Community Service. One of those large changes is the Transformation and Sustainability Plan. So the Transformation and Sustainability Plan is a set of goals that are set out to expand access, improve customer service, strengthen community impact, build a long-term sustainability, and position national service for future growth. One of the things that that means is that the current structure that we're in physically is making some changes. So you'll see on this map some dots. Right now, currently, the way that the Corporation for National and Community Service operates is that there is a state office with somewhere probably between 2 to 7 members in each of those offices that are responsible for AmeriCorps VISTA and Senior Corps grants throughout their state. With the Transformation and Sustainability Plan, we're going to move from a state-focused model to a regional model. So offices that already exist. So here in Ohio, we're very fortunate because one of the offices is actually going to be in Ohio. So the Midwest will continue to be operated through Columbus, Ohio. We'll be covering Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions. I see that Charlotte already answered one, but in case you're not reading the group chat, yes, the VMSU is responsible for helping members with things like health benefits. And I see that Charlotte already gave the VISTA Campus link so that the members or even the project supervisors could kind of familiarize themselves with some of those pieces too. All right. If there aren't any questions, we'll move on to VISTA project management. So an important piece of VISTA project management is the VAD. So the VAD is the VISTA assignment description, and it's used as a model for the position description. It serves as a work plan. It helps to translate the VISTA application into manageable milestones with a realistic set of activities for your member. It helps the member identify a course of action, and it evolves to fit the members' and project's needs. It also assists with recruiting and with tracking performance. It's really important to use the VAD to help manage performance. If you haven't already set up some kind of system for how you're going to check in with your VISTA member regularly, you want to go ahead and start thinking through what that's going to look like. For some VISTA project sponsors or subsites supervisors, I know some like to do it more informally, so perhaps that's over coffee, perhaps that's with some flexibility throughout the week. I know for others, it's better if they say bi-weekly on this day at this location, this is where we go through the VAD. So that's really up to you and the VISTA member and your all's working style and office culture about how that's going to work best. But go ahead and start to put some thought into that piece, because the VAD is going to help you guide performance conversations. It's going to allow you to kind of use it even as like a checklist to figure out where the VISTA member is really thriving with the project assignment and where there could be some opportunities for improvement or where they perhaps need some support. We often hear that the VAD is an important tool when you think about retention. Constantly when we talk about managing VISTA projects, we hear that successful management happens because of the VAD and the OSOT. We have a great little guide here to help us think through early terminations. So our goal is to get all of our members through 365 days of service. And sometimes that doesn't happen. One of the reasons that it doesn't happen is because a member has accepted other employment. This is on a national level. So 30% of members throughout the nation have accepted other employment as a reason for early terminating. In our office, we also like to think about that 7.1% you'll see in the middle where it says financial hardship. We often put those two together and really think of them as one. So you'll see that nearly almost 40%, almost half of the members are leaving because they can't see through their year of service. So I would just encourage you to be really thoughtful about what this looks like. You'll want to use the VAD, obviously, to manage the performance. But during these check-ins, it's also important to really stop and think about the VISTA member, what's going on, and how you can improve, their work-life balance. So there's not anything that you can do as far as supplementing their stipend, but there might be some resources that are in the community or around you that you could help point them to, so that they can find some comfort in the year and really be able to pull through that 1 year of successful service. So staying in touch with your candidates. There's probably, for most people, somewhere between 20 to 30 days when they have started their, when they have been accepted to service and when they start their service. And so this is a very critical time to think about keeping in touch with your members. We hear a lot of organizations say that successful engagement during this time looks like inviting them to organizational events or meetings or board meetings, getting them connected with the organization in small ways that opens the door and helps them feel prepared, and also like they're not just waiting, that things are actually happening. There are also communities that do a great job at creating a network of VISTAs or even AmeriCorps state and national members, the whole AmeriCorps family, getting them connected through service activities or luncheons. If you've got a current VISTA on board that's local that you can connect them with, or like I said, a group of national service members that you can connect the member with, that'll really help them feel grounded in what's about to come, and will be a large support to them in many ways. I know that we talked about this during one of our last webinars as well. When we think about housing and we think about that early termination that we saw earlier, it's really important, especially if you have a member that's from outside of your community, that you give them some local tips around what housing looks like. If there's a way that you can navigate maybe partnering with other people in your community, that's fantastic as well. Anything that you can do to help support them with the critical pieces like housing, transportation, and meals will obviously help keep your member engaged and also focused on the project at hand. So once we get past that, we're on to VISTA member orientation. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that the VMO looks a little bit different than what we did in the past. So if you're familiar with AmeriCorps VISTA, in the past we had something called PSO, or pre-service orientation. It was a 3.5-day training. Oftentimes for members in Ohio, they met somewhere in Columbus or Chicago. For NeighborWorks, it might have been in other states. But during this time, members had the opportunity to engage in learning sessions that had topics like poverty in America, resource development, volunteer mobilization, communication with your supervisor. They were all little tidbits that were meant to set the VISTA member up for success in their year. Also during the PSO, it was sort of like a last call. Candidates got to see what AmeriCorps VISTA was really going to look like. And if it didn't seem like it was going to work for them, they had the opportunity to not swear into service on the last day. So all of our members came with a deeper understanding of AmeriCorps VISTA on their first day of service on site. Now we have something called a VMO. And a VMO is a couple of, it's a series of tutorials and some online readings, and it's 2 live webinars. So when we think about the 2 live webinars, the first one is the countdown to service. It's the week before the VISTA member starts their service, and it highlights things like what they'll want to do before they get on site, what they need to know about their relocation. It reiterates anything that they need to disclose as far as criminal history, and it also provides them an opportunity to ask questions. We always do these webinars at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time so that we can ensure that everyone can jump on. The next webinar is Launching Your VISTA Service. It also always occurs at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the VISTA members' first day of service. It's a 90-minute webinar, and it's meant to highlight the VISTA program's mission. It discusses the VAD. It describes where VISTA members can find resources and support. And this is the opportunity where we officially swear the VISTA member into service. They'll also have the opportunity to ask questions during this webinar. It's important to note too, if you're familiar in the past, VISTA members, when they were sworn in to service over the phone or through a webinar, oftentimes you had to complete paperwork that then had to be sent to Debbie, and then Debbie passed that along to our office. We actually now do that electronically. It's in the My AmeriCorps portal. If your members having any issues with that, there's information on the VISTA campus to help them process their oath form, but it's also really important to remind them that they'll want to take careful consideration before submitting that they've put in the right date and the right names, otherwise it gets sent back to us. The other piece that I'd like to highlight is that obviously these two webinars are a shorter distance than the 3.5 days that we had with the PSO. So we'll talk about this more, but we really need everyone's thoughtfulness when we think about the on-site orientation so that we can set our members up for success and they have a strong start with a VMO, just as strong as they would have with the pre-service orientation. So this is the outline for the VMO. It starts with pre-service coursework. So those are things like the terms and conditions, tutorials that they can find on the VISTA campus. It's their onboarding forms, like their beneficiary, their W-2, selecting their end of service benefit award. It's the countdown to service webinar that we just mentioned that happens the week before their service, and then launching their VISTA service webinar that happens on the first day. We also encourage everyone to have a game plan on the first day for the criminal history check. We'll talk about that more in just a moment. On-site orientation and training, or OSAT, as you often hear us say, that begins on the first day. There's early service coursework. You can find that on the landing page, Starting Your VISTA Service. It's a brief overview of courses that mirror some of the sessions that might have been offered during PSO. There's no way for us to check to see if the members have completed it, but we highly encourage the members to complete this coursework. And also going back to keeping your members engaged between those 20 and 30 days between selection and starting. This also might be some coursework that you could recommend to the member if they're just itching to get started. I also want to mention the VISTA gear. So in the past with PSO, that's where the member got their polo and t-shirt. They got a water bottle and a journal and a bag, and they showed up on site with all of those. Now there's a different procedure for VISTA gear, but know that when they are participating in the Launching Your VISTA Service webinar, the VTU is going to tell them how they can attain all of that awesome gear. So it takes about 2 weeks to get all of that together, but they'll still have all their VISTA garb. So when we think about onboarding candidates, there's some really important actions. On the first day, it's critical that the VISTA member submits the oath form. If they do not take the oath, if they do not submit the form, they will not be eligible for service. So again, it's important that they take the time to fill out the form correctly and ensure that it happens on the first day. We'll talk about this more on the next slide, but also ensuring that they're completing the criminal history check. We want to have some kind of plan in place so that we can make sure that that happens. Members are responsible for having their fingerprints to VISTA headquarters within 30 days. We also want to make sure that we have a strong OSAT, so on-site orientation and training, where the member understands VISTA and also understands the highlights of your organization. When we think about criminal history checks, we want to be considerate of some automatic disqualifications for serving as an AmeriCorps VISTA. You cannot be convicted of murder, you cannot be listed as a sex offender, and you can't currently be on parole or probation. There are some reasons where you could possibly be disqualified, like if a candidate fails to disclose their criminal history. They have the opportunity to disclose their criminal history when they submit the application. They're reminded about disclosing their criminal history during the first webinar, and then again during the Launching Your VISTA Service webinar. So it's really important that the members know that they want to reveal if something has happened and they didn't put it on the application. Sometimes members can be disqualified for a DUI or an assault charge, maybe a drug charge. You'll see in parentheses here that it says not eligible for the education award. That could be possible if someone does have a drug charge, that they might not be eligible for the education award. As you'll see here, there are fingerprint cards that have to be completed and sent to VISTA headquarters within 30 days. If those fingerprints are not to headquarters during that time, it will be proposed that the VISTA member be terminated. Now, the VISTA member is going to receive $25 in their first VISTA living stipend, and that is going to be to cover the fingerprint cards. I also want to mention that if your organization has any other checks that are required, you can absolutely, move forward with those checks. Just know that the VISTA fingerprints still have to be completed. We're setting the baseline with our automatic disqualifications. Your agency could have something different. So fingerprint cards. I know Debbie sent some great information about those. You should have received those in the mail. It says last week. And if you haven't, you should be receiving them soon. You'll notice that the fingerprint cards are the old school. So if you're new to this, go ahead and think through where in your community you can get these ink fingerprints. They're fingerprints rolled. There's 2 cards. You'll notice it's probably in a manila envelope that there's also some instructions about the fingerprints. There's an FAQ. And again, there's an opportunity for the member to disclose if they still haven't shared any information that they needed to share during the application process up to this point. They can disclose it on the form. One of the most important things to highlight here is that you want to make sure that you hold on to the tracking number. So there should be a UPS tracking label with every fingerprint card that goes out. It's super important to hold on to that number. I don't know if you want to go ahead and snap a photo or send it in an email, but sometimes things happen with delivery, and we oftentimes need those tracking numbers. So please put it in your thoughts right now that if you haven't already, that you're notating what that tracking number is going to look like. OSAT, so on-site orientation and training. This is where your member is going to receive their onboarding in the first few weeks from your organization. We had a great webinar about this recently, and so I'll briefly remind you that during the OSAT, we want to discuss the expectations for roles, responsibilities, and what that meeting schedule will look like, especially in regards to discussing the VAD and where they're at with their service. Sharing the mission and the goals of your organization, introducing the VISTA member to staff. You have a clear understanding of capacity building and what the VISTA member can and cannot do, but everyone on your staff may not. And so it's really important that not only you introduce them to the members of the staff, but that you really explain what VISTA provides to the agency and the community. You want to share your organization's policies and procedures for things like leave, time and attendance, mileage reimbursement. You'll also want to recognize if there are any specific training needs that your member might have. Maybe you already identified those in the application or during the interview, or perhaps as you're getting to learn them a little bit more during this OSAT, you start to put a plan in place around what kind of professional development they could use to really have a successful year. And then the last piece is just developing a work plan based off the VAD. So the VAD really has some places so it can evolve. And for some members, they might need something that's a little bit more specific, something that they can check off on a daily or weekly basis. And so just putting something into words that make sense and that you can follow up with in a more concise way. So when we think about ideas and best practices from Veteran VISTA sub-site supervisors and what we hear from VISTA members, I often say that this one sounds kind of silly, but this is what we constantly hear, is that members often tell us about the meals that they shared during their first day or their first week. I remind everyone that VISTA members are living on a limited stipend, and so having the opportunity to go out to a nice lunch or even a casual lunch is something that probably they're not able to take in very often. And so our members are always sharing with us how much they appreciated the opportunity to break bread with everyone in their organization. We also hear that members love scavenger hunts. So those are different throughout different organizations. Sometimes those scavenger hunts are in the building. I know that I've got someone in my portfolio that had everyone on a bus doing a community tour. There are sometimes scavenger hunts throughout nonprofits within the community. So just think about where it makes sense in your neighborhood, and perhaps take on that idea of really getting your members actively engaged. So when we go to this next slide, I think this is a great representative of why VISTA members and VISTA supervisors are continuously telling us that they love these scavenger hunts. When you look at this cone of learning, it says that after 2 weeks, we're going to remember 10% of what we read, 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, 50% of what we see and hear. Those are all passive activities, like reading, listening, watching a movie, looking at an exhibit. But when we get engaged in active activities where we're actually receiving, participating, and doing, we're likely to remember 70% of what we say and 90% of what we both do and say. I think this is a great quote to sum up this graphic. I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand. So I really encourage you to, if you haven't already, think about what kind of active learning activities you can implement into your OSAT plan so that you have a successful first couple weeks of learning with your VISTA member. Our office here in Ohio is going to conduct some post-VMO webinars for all NeighborWorks VISTA members. Those are going to be on August 27th for the August 19th VMO. And for the September 3rd VMO, we're going to host a call on September 10th. Both will be from 1 to 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. What we're going to do during the VMO webinar is we're going to talk a little bit about the VISTA life cycle. So learning, doing, teaching. It's really important for VISTA members to know that this life cycle is normal. It generally takes people anywhere from a month to maybe 4 months to really settle in and to learn the ropes of AmeriCorps VISTA and your agency. We really see a lot more action in maybe the 2 to 9 month period. And this is where members are really contributing and performing at their best. And then somewhere between 6 and 12 months is where we often see the members transferring the capacity. So they're passing on their good works, they're creating tools where the next member can pick up. We want to ensure that members see these pieces so as they fall on some of the challenges that happen within a VISTA year, they can see that this is just part of the life cycle and normal everyday today learning as a VISTA. We're also going to discuss some VISTA alumni advice. will talk about relationships with their VISTA supervisor. Our office often also hears that members are struggling with understanding what team development really looks like. So the whole forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning, we'll go through pieces. So again, for VISTA members that might be in their first role in a professional setting, this will hopefully give them some insight into what to expect throughout the year. And then lastly, we're going to highlight some pieces of the VISTA member handbook, like the basic laws and federal regulations. So some limitations on their duties and activities, like proselytizing or participating in electoral activities. We'll go through those pieces. And then lastly, discuss where they can find the resources like VISTA Campus or nationalservice.gov. So I'll stop here and see if anyone has any questions.
Hey, Stacy. I see that there's been a couple questions about the mailing labels. So if you did not see a mailing label in your fingerprint kit, we'll get one out to you. So don't worry about that. We'll be sure to get those out in the mail.
All right, well, if there aren't any other questions, we'll move on to the VISTA member management portion. So as you know, VISTA members are responsible for serving 365 days at their sponsoring organization. I'll let you know that this might be confusing for some members. If they are familiar with AmeriCorps State and National, those members are responsible for working a particular amount of hours. Each of the AmeriCorps programs, AmeriCorps VISTA, AmeriCorps State and National, and AmeriCorps NCCC, we all have different regulations, and so there's different legislation and different rules. But for VISTA members, it's full-time, and they're serving 365 days for the year. There's some various benefits that come with being a VISTA member. One is that you get 10 days of medical leave and also 10 days of personal leave. You have the opportunity to choose an education award or a cash stipend. The education award is currently around $6,000, and that can be used on past loans. It can be used on future endeavors with your education. It can be used towards loans in the future. Also, there's some really cool ways that you can use your education award, like studying abroad or doing some kind of outdoor activity as well. If you go to the nationalservice.gov and you put education award into the search engine, it gives a plethora of ideas and ways that you can use this education award. The cash stipend is around $1,300 for VISTA members. If you choose the education award, you have up until the 10th month to choose and change your mind to the cash stipend. If you choose the cash stipend, you can't change your mind and choose the education award. So we always encourage our VISTA members, and they should know this information before they get to your site, but just in case, they should choose the education award if they're unsure, because they'll have the opportunity to change. There's also childcare assistance. There's a subsistence allowance or the stipend. That'll be different for everyone in NeighborWorks. If you're not sure, you can get on the VISTA campus and look up those rates for each state and county. We like to believe that we're offering VISTA members some really great trainings that maybe you've seen in the webinars or through things like the in-service training. That is something that we've done in response to no longer hosting PSOs. Now we get VISTA members together somewhere between the 3 and 6 month portion of their service. We collect either in the state or regionally. And this is an opportunity for VISTA members to get some more in-depth training to really help them sustain the last 6 to maybe 9 months of their service. We also know that we have great partners like NeighborWorks that are often able to offer amazing professional experiences through their personal trainings for VISTA members. Members also get non-competitive eligibility. And what that means is the day after they end their service, they're eligible to apply for a federal job and have the non-competitive eligibility preference. It's for 1 year. It doesn't mean that the VISTA member is guaranteed federal employment, but what it does mean is that they could be given a preference for hiring. So that agency doesn't have to go through the competitive hiring process. As long as the member meets all of the eligibility needs, then they could be moved through the process a little bit more quickly with that non-competitive eligibility. There's relocation benefits, mileage, there's a $750 settling in allowance, and there's also a healthcare subsidy that's available for members, whether they currently have healthcare or do not. There's 2 different options. VISTA members can also attend classes during their service term, as long as those classes are not going to interfere with their service. They're also able to work a part-time job that does not interfere with their service under the conditions that the job is legal and part-time. There is a form that you can find on the VISTA campus. I'm sure that Charlotte and Debbie can guide you to it as well if your VISTA member is going to have a part-time job that they can complete. Sometimes in some circumstances, we also can have a VISTA member teleserve. We're thoughtful about this in times like, say an organization is going to be closed for 2 to 3 weeks during the holiday. Well, the Corporation for National and Community Service doesn't think it's reasonable that the VISTA member would not be serving, would still be receiving their stipend for 2 to 3 weeks because the agency isn't open. And so a lot of times when things like that happen, we'll put together a teleservice agreement during that time. So the member can continue to do their service work, they'll just do it at home or at a different location. So managing members, I already alluded to this, but VISTA members have some prohibited activities that they need to be mindful about. So under the laws, the regulations, members are not able to proselytize, they can't lobby, there's not to be any electoral activities, they can't run for office, and there's no fundraising for political campaigns during their service as well. There is a great chapter in the VISTA member handbook. I believe it's chapter 15, and it'll go through the terms and conditions of their service. It also outlines things like what they may do and what they may not do. And I find that that is a really helpful resource, especially when we think about navigating the prohibited activities around things like lobbying and electoral activities. So we'll highlight some things here that sub-sites are prohibited from doing. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, the VISTA member, although they'll be following along with many of your policies and procedures, you're not able to fire a VISTA member. So if you find yourself in a challenging situation with a VISTA member, you want to do something similar to what you would do probably if it was a staff member on board. You want to document every meeting. You want to make sure that you're setting clear expectations with the member, that you're keeping copies of things like the member's acceptance of the agency policies that you presented to them, and also that you're keeping Debbie informed on what the issues are. Once Debbie knows about these pieces, she can reach out to the Ohio State office and request a removal for a member. So yeah, just ensure that you document, that you're in clear communication with Debbie so that she can pass that information along to our office and that we can respond in an appropriate and an efficient manner. You also can't use a member to replace a paid staff member. That might seem like something that you understand, but sometimes there's situations like maybe a VISTA member is working on some capacity of marketing and someone from the marketing department leaves and there's some additional work that needs to be done. the member can't take on that workload of that lost staff member. Even if it's just for an interim time, they've got to stay with their VAD, and it's the organization's responsibility to figure out where to disperse that workload throughout the staff. You also can't supplement the VISTA members' living allowance. I know we have a lot of really supportive sub-site supervisors that really want to see their VISTA members feel comfortable during their service term. But just know that giving the member cash to supplement their stipend is not appropriate. If there are things that you want to be able to do and you're not sure if it's appropriate or acceptable, again, you can get on the the VISTA campus and look through the sponsor handbook, and there's a list of appropriate ways that you can support the VISTA member during their terms of service. So as you know, data collection and reporting is an important piece of any VISTA project. So with progress reports, you're going to report every 6 months to NeighborWorks. The reporting is going to be on some targets and some measures that were identified in the VISTA application. You'll provide a narrative of VISTA member activities and accomplishments. There's also quarterly reports. So those are reports that are going to be due every 3 months to NeighborWorks. And again, this is an opportunity to highlight some outstanding stories about the NeighborWorks VISTA team. And then those stories get passed on to our office, and we'll pass them off to headquarters so that we can highlight all of the fantastic work that's happening because of all of you. So sponsor verification reports. We talked in the beginning that an important piece of compliance for AmeriCorps VISTA is ensuring that members are serving full-time during those 365 days that they've committed to service. And so we have a sponsor verification report that's due in eGrants bi-weekly. You do not have to worry about submitting this report. NeighborWorks is going to submit that on your behalf. Sub-site supervisors are going to receive a bi-weekly email from NeighborWorks asking to reply within 24 hours of receipt if the VISTA member serving at your site is not reporting to service. So again, just make sure you have clear communication if you're having any time and attendance issues so that NeighborWorks can accurately report the time and attendance for all members. There are some special initiatives that we like to highlight through the Corporation for National and Community Service. The first one at the start of the year is Martin Luther King Day of Service. We'd love to get AmeriCorps members, VISTAs, Senior Corps, volunteers, and communities together to really highlight this important day. People put together an array of service projects. Sometimes it's around food drives or maybe a clothing drive. There's all kinds of unique ways that people put together a great event for their communities. In April, it's the first Tuesday of every April, we highlight a day that we call National Service Recognition Day. And this is where we encourage all of our national service projects to get out in their communities and to gauge local elected officials and educate them on all of the great works that are happening because of VISTA members, Senior Corps volunteers, and how they're really part of the solution to solving some of the local problems and challenges that the community is facing. The last day that we like to highlight is September 11th, National Day of Service and Remembrance. Again, we have projects throughout the nation that craft amazing projects. Sometimes it's tributes, sometimes it's recognizing current officials. There's an array of events that people put together to really, again, highlight this day of service and remembrance. Resources. So there's so much information that we share about the VISTA program, and sometimes it can be overwhelming to remember every piece. So the important part is to know where your resources are. If you haven't already got on VISTA Campus, put it into your search engine. There is a plethora of opportunity to learn. The VISTA Member Handbook, the VISTA Sponsor Handbook, those both are important pieces and probably can answer all of your questions about the VISTA project that you might have. The VMSU that we talked about earlier, they would be involved with any of the pieces of getting your member started to service or maybe ending their service. The National Service Hotline, again, that number was on one of the top slides. I've already talked about the VISTA Sponsor Handbook and VISTA Member Handbook that you can find on the VISTA campus. And of course, our Ohio State office. We want to continue to provide you technical assistance and ensure that you have all of your needs met. So with all of that, I will ask if there's any questions about anything we just discussed or anything overall throughout the webinar. In case you're not reading the chat, I will highlight one of the last points that Charlotte just pointed out. This PowerPoint is going to be sent out after the webinar, so it will be available to you.
Thank you, Stacy. If anyone would like to unmute their phone line, you can go ahead and ask a question over the phone, or feel free to chat something into us. Okay, well, I would like to take this opportunity to remind everybody that the fingerprint kits did go out in the mail last week. So everyone should have them by now or should be receiving them very soon. And we will double check to make sure everybody has the mailing label. If anyone's missing that, I'll see if that's something we can't send to you via email to expedite that and get that out to you quickly. Also, as a reminder, for those of you who have VISTA members starting next Monday on the 19th, they would have already taken their countdown webinar, which I believe happened on Tuesday. So hopefully they've already taken that. And then for those of you that have VISTA members beginning on Tuesday, September 3rd, their countdown webinar is scheduled for August 27th. So this is the webinar that Stacy referenced that your VISTA candidates should go ahead and take a week or so before they begin service at your site.
We had a question. When would we go directly to VMSU as opposed to talking with Debbie and team? I would say never. I mean, we'll be able to redirect you if for some reason we can't answer your question, but just talk to us first.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You want to go ahead and make us your first point of contact. And then if we know we're not in a position to answer a VMSU question, we'll always let you know and then redirect you.
Someone's also asking if we have a list of all the VISTA sites and or other local VISTA sites. So the VISTA leader puts together a contact list of all the members and what state they're serving in and at what organization. That usually takes about a month from when everyone starts service, so sometime in the fall that'll go out, and your members, you'll probably be copied on that email to the members. And then in terms of local sites that are not in the NeighborWorks network, that's something that you would have to contact your local state office about, or local regional office in the future. So we can help connect you to them if you want to get in touch.
These are all great questions, and I don't see anything coming in right now. So I'll go ahead and say thank you to all of you for joining us today, and a special thanks to Stacy and the team at the Ohio State office that we partner with. For those of you that are new to the NeighborWorks VISTA program, we are very fortunate to be partnered with such a strong state office, soon to become a regional office, and very fortunate and grateful for that partnership. So on behalf of NeighborWorks and all our network members, Stacy, I would just like to thank you and all your colleagues for all the great support that you've shown us over the years. And looks like we just had one more question come in.
Yeah, so VISTA members should be receiving email messages from the VMSU ongoing as they've been approaching the start of their service. They will have received a link to Vista Campus with instructions on how to set up an account. But I would definitely encourage you to follow up with your member and make sure that they have access to those resources. And maybe remind them to check their junk mail too. I know I've had Vista emails go to my junk mail, so they should have been receiving info. Yes.
And I'd just like to piggyback on what Charlotte just said. Don't assume anything. Please do remind your incoming VISTA members about the resources at the VISTA campus because it's something that could fall by the wayside in terms of them remembering to access it. And it's such a great resource that it might be something they continue to use throughout the term of their service.
Yeah, especially the VISTA member handbook on VISTA campus. That's really important for them to review and get to know. It has the rules and regulations, and it will answer a lot of their questions before they need to even ask them. So definitely make sure they have access to that.
So I'll let you take the next one.
Okay, the next question is about, will we be hosting webinars for members throughout their year of service? Yes. The first webinar will be a couple of weeks into service, and that'll be a welcome. And then there will be ongoing trainings, professional development opportunities, and other type of webinars throughout the year. So you'll be seeing those notifications as they come out, and the answer is in short, yes.
Yeah, oftentimes when our VISTA leader hosts webinars for VISTA members, we will copy all of you sub-site supervisors as a FYI, just so you're aware of how much support and how much reach we have and touch we have with your VISTA members. And what we're doing here at headquarters, you know, offering educational webinars and also just be keeping in touch with them and doing check-ins. So that's something that we're really good about copying all of you on because we want you to know, to the extent that we have contact with your members. And if we ask them to be on a webinar, it's important that you know the time and the date for scheduling purposes. Well, thank you all. These have been fantastic questions and certainly not your last opportunity to ask questions. We are here whenever you need us, so feel free to phone us or email us. We will get back to you as soon as we can. We're all very excited to start the next program year and hope that you are as well. So look for an email coming out towards the end of the week. We'll send out this presentation and slides so you can review them and have them at your ready. And one last time, thank you, Stacy, so much for joining us this afternoon and sharing this wealth of information that you have.
Thank you, Debbie.
All right, good day, everyone.
Bye-bye.